You know, for some reason this summer, Kurt, I seem to be mastering my skills in gliders. I'm not sure why.
We got to switch it up season to season.
Well, I guess
you kind of
so.
get on you get on a float plane hitch, and then you move over to so now you're on the.
It's got to be it.
Well, it was a perfect year to do the Magellan in too.
Well, it was
because you've been flying a lot of foam.
The point I'm getting to is I'm used to foam. I've gotten familiar with flying and how that feels.
Yeah.
And when you move to something like this, it's an incredible. There's a stark difference.
Totally different experience.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's still got all the same characteristics, but it's so much smoother and so much easier.
So much
you
more
don't
accurate.
lose so much inertia and speed and stuff.
Yeah, you can
it's
carry
amazing.
it through and do a lot of neat things with it.
Yeah,
for sure.
it is. Well, let's get into the review. Model characteristics, build as advertised, 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, the kit comes with all the major pieces there for you. You just got to do a little bit of fitting and putting together and stuff. A little
engineering.
bit light modeling.
Yeah.
Is what it really is. And its directions are very, very basic. I mean, it's kind of like, you do scratch builds.
Yes.
You don't have any guidance when you do scratch builds, but you have a lot of modeling experience, so you're able to go through all the different components for different
I know
aspects
what's
of it.
supposed to be there.
Yep.
And that's what makes the difference.
That's exactly it. If you've never assembled a plane before, you're going to find it a little more difficult to go through and assemble because you've got to understand the basics.
Yeah.
And about placement, about linkage, about things like that. And you're going to have to supply those pieces, the push rods and the linkage ends and things. So if you don't know how to assemble those or put those together how they should be put together, it'll be a little bit frustrating. So you want some help from somebody with some modeling experience. And the directions are just that. They're very basic. They give you the CG and they give you a couple of pointers here and there. But generally it's, all right, here's the pieces and put it together and fly it. So. But all the critical stuff is there. CG was there, your weight, all the things you need as a modeler to know if this is going to fly or not going to fly.
Yep.
So from that perspective, it's plenty enough to be able to put together.
Sure.
So.
All right, well, finish 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at because it's unfinished fiberglass fuse, and it has almost a, almost not a carbon fiber, but it has a very
pair
checked.
of pants that looked like that as a kid, didn't you? I mean, we grew up in the 70s.
Yeah,
Come on,
it does look like a pattern on a pair of pants.
Yeah.
But the covering on the wings itself, I think it's like Aura cover, very thin, very lightweight, but very nicely seamed on the wings. It's laid down beautifully. So
yeah, I commented on that when I first saw it. That it's just, I mean, you're used to seeing it. It's commonplace now to see a nice finish from the factory, but this one's got it's just a nice looking
when
finish.
you look at the construction, and we can get into that in durability and stuff like that, but you look at the construction of the D-box wing with foam core, on all your control surfaces, and on the back end, it's combination balsa and foam core between fiberglass. It's very precise.
Yes,
and
it is.
with the covering cut in and just laid literally on top of the fiberglass.
Yeah.
It has to be right. There's no fudge room at all.
No, not at all.
It's got to be clean, and it's.
I mean, the
very
distance
nice
from you can see the white through the clear covering, and it's just a consistent line all the way around. It's very nice.
Yep. Very
nice.
accurate. So.
And there weren't any wrinkles in it when you got it, right?
No, I didn't have to apply heat anywhere
okay.
to smooth out wrinkles. It's been perfect from.
Good.
And that's been in warm weather and cooler weather, so it would have had a chance to shrink and do stuff.
Sure.
But I think a good part of that too is you have very, very little movement on the wing itself.
Yeah.
To where that it's a very fixed, solid surface for that covering to lay down.
All right, well, moves us on to power, 4 out of 5. Now, we've both talked about this when we were flying it. It's not overpowered, but yet it's got enough to get you up to do it. It's got enough to do what it needs to do for you.
Yeah, powered glider is meant to get, the power plant's meant to give you enough to get to altitude.
Yep.
You don't need a tow line, you don't need, a winch launch or anything like that. It's just, it gets you up there. And the power plant's ample for that.
Yeah.
It'll get you to altitude. One tip when you're flying it is try to level out your turns, and when you played around with it.
Yep.
When you're aileron flying it and just trying to climb to altitude, you burn a lot of energy off. A lot of inefficient turns. If you flatten those turns out and do some nice elevated turns, you'll get up to altitude
right now
twice as quick as if you would if you just did aileron turns.
Well,
and
I noticed that when you're doing ailerons only, it feels like you're constantly stalling in that turn and leveling and then stalling and leveling.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just because it's the way it's climbing. It's climbing up instead of,
So use your rudder and you'll do nice little elevator spirals all the way up, and you're at the altitude, then cut the power plant off. So and that's all you need it for. In fact, you get more power, now you've added more weight, and you've kind of compromised what it's supposed to be, and it is a sailplane / glider. It's what it's meant to do. So.
Sure. All right, ground handling, 5 out of 5. Ooh, man.
Yeah, hand launch. Of course, we don't have any kind of landing gear to deal with. Naturally, it's a sailplane. But the rigidity of the wing, the design of the hydral,
It's
the
a straight
airfoil they chose
launch.
to use on this.
It doesn't want to tip left or right.
No.
It's, which obviously you don't have enough
Yeah,
torque
it's
on
really
the prop
it's
to
a
do
level
that.
launch. You're
Yeah.
best off to apply some power into a level launch. Don't force it into a stall climb at all or anything like that. And it pulls right out and really behaves well.
Yeah.
And when you come into the ground effect, then
It's ridiculous.
and this kind of goes into flight as advertised a little bit, but it really is
Yeah.
ground handling. You drop those flaps, and I think that's when you got your first big grin out of it.
Well, you just felt like it just sat there and looked at you in midair.
Yeah.
It was just there. It was. It wasn't going anywhere.
Didn't want to balloon excessively. Didn't go crazy on you. And the thing that I loved is it maintained its stability.
Yes.
With flaps fully extended.
Yep.
Its core characteristics weren't compromised at all.
You
so
don't feel like you've only got one shot with it by any means.
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
you could bring it right to 4 inches off the ground. If you don't like it, as long as your prop clears, take off.
Yep. Hit some power and you're
Yep,
back off
and you're
again.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed. Very enjoyable flight. But now we aren't even into flight yet. But,
Nope.
durability, 4 out of 5. I kind of wanted to test the durability a little bit tonight. I thought I'd cartwheel it.
You wingtipped it.
I didn't actually cartwheel.
No,
I
you
wing tipped it.
You ground looped it.
Yeah, there you go. That
Yeah,
ground
you
loop.
ground looped it.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure you put it together good.
Yeah, it's for traditional, I'd say typical landings that may be less than perfect, not crashes, but typical landings that are
Well,
slightly
you
less
did
than
the same
perfect.
thing too. You looped it around.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the most fragile part of this whole plane would be the V-tail. V-tails traditionally are anyhow.
It really is. Yeah, you've got all the pressure being taken by the block. It's
Yeah.
all right there. So you've really only got this much of that horizontal stabilizer, which you'd have on a traditional tail. That much of it holding in place. Where
Exactly.
typically you've got a lot bigger purchase with the fuselage.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got more inherent stability, and in some cases you've got a spar, a unified spar. This is two very light, stabilizer halves being stuck inside the fuselage. So that's definitely your weak point if
Yeah.
you're going to snap something.
When I was doing 3D with it when you weren't looking, I didn't have any problem.
I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you use
okay.
some tail touches and stuff?
I did everything. I did it all. If you weren't looking, I did everything. All right, pilot experience, flight is advertised, 5 out of 5. We've talked a lot about the flight already, but just to hone, I guess just to nail a few of the points that stand out with us is one, just the awesome stability that you have with it. We flew it on high rates the whole time. Normally on high rates, you're going to feel high rates.
Yeah.
On any plane. This one you didn't. It wasn't twitchy. It wasn't jerky.
No.
It never felt like it got out of control.
And in fact, the instructions don't cover your throw.
Yeah.
Your throw.
Well,
at
whatever
all.
you have them at is perfect.
I just kind of eyeballed it and
Yep.
figured, this should be plenty because we've got a very precise wing. And in a case where, we used, the high torque Metal Gear digital servos, the 5065 MGs. And the reason to do that, you think, well, it doesn't require that much torque
Yeah.
to move these control surfaces. But when you go with a real high-end digital or higher-end digital servo, with metal gears or with titanium gears or with
Yeah.
carbonate gears, you've got more accuracy. And what you really want is that accuracy. You've got very little throw on like your ailerons, very little throw relatively speaking on your V-tail control surfaces. So you don't want sloppiness in your linkage,
Yeah.
and you don't want kind of a lower accuracy servo that has maybe a larger deadband, things
Yeah.
like that. You want that precision of a nice high-end digital servo because it's going to translate. And I think you saw when you flew it too, every little tiny movement is going to translate accurately to the position
yeah.
or the attitude
Yeah.
or the
Yep.
the angle or the attitude on all axes of the control surfaces of the airframe. So you want that precision. You want that locked in nice and tight. And you put that then in a what I think was the ideal airfoil to put on this. They use a 7037 airfoil. Not to sit there and say, okay, here's a range of airfoils. Can you tell me all the characteristics? No, we're not hardcore aeronautical engineers at that level. But when you look at how wide the flight envelope is on this, that's where you know that they either made the right decisions or they didn't. And the flight envelope, you'll agree, is tremendous. Extremely slow speeds, flaps fully extended, creeping to where you could at a fast pace walk as fast as this thing going in the wind. Totally stable, totally controllable, and very predictable.
It just caught me off guard when you threw the flaps down. I said it earlier. It just kind of sat there and looked at you, and it's like, is this thing moving, or am I going to stall it?
Yeah.
And, you're not. It's moving, but it's so stable.
Yeah, you slow the speed down, and you have just as much input control, just as much attitude change on aileron control, on elevator, as you do at high speed and low speed. And I think the other thing you discovered too, I had you go into a dive.
Yeah.
Say, go ahead and bleed off that inertia and just do loop after loop, total
Yeah.
power off.
We got four
high
of them
speed,
out of it.
it doesn't want to
power.
get pitchy. It doesn't want to do anything on your high speed. It's extremely flat,
Yeah.
wide flight envelope, which
Yeah.
is really couldn't ask for more in
And
any aircraft.
The
really.
thing carries its energy so well when the power's off, because a lot of times when you're flying it, if you don't know you've got the throttle off, you don't realize that you're off the power, because you don't see that.
There's no
dip.
sync.
There's
You
no
don't
sync
feel
at
the
all.
sync going on. Yeah.
And it feels very controllable, and it holds a lot of energy, and I think that's what made it so enjoyable to fly.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things, but we'll just leave it at 5 out of 5. It was a very
Yeah,
very
it was
enjoyable
fantastic.
flight experience.
Just the right dihedral in the wing,
Yep.
just the right airfoil,
Yeah.
everything was just
I mean,
absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
I really don't know how you could improve on a sailplane this size
Yeah,
in terms of performance and handling. It's just,
No, I
it's,
mean-
it's all there.
exactly. I mean, you could go on and on about it, but for the size it is and everything that they did, it works well and it flies extremely well. Flight time, we gave it a 5 out of 5. Now, Kurt and I were messing around with it probably, I'd say from the time we first hand launched it. Now, we were doing some not touch and goes, but we were doing some low level, setting up for landings and then take off. A lot of climb outs. We probably got 15 minutes with us messing around.
And we
with
weren't
it.
even riding the air at all.
No, we weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't. I mean, it wasn't a good night for thermals or anything like that. We had a
No,
slight
no.
breeze, enough to keep it
It was
up
the
there.
evening time when we flew it
Yeah.
for your test flight.
But we got quite a bit of time out of it on that battery.
Yeah,
so
when I flew it at the field during the day, perfect day for a little bit of thermal activity. Half an hour flight's nothing if you're up there working.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's a sailplane. Work
sure.
the air currents. That's its whole
Yeah.
intended purpose. Use the power plant to get up to altitude, and
and chop
then
it,
your
yeah.
skill kicks in. Whether or not you can
Exactly.
find those thermals and hang in them and take advantage of it.
Yeah. Field size, definitely a park.
Yeah, and that's another nice thing too, is you can take this down to your local flying park if they allow electric aircraft to fly. It's the perfect size for it.
It is.
What you're going to find is it comes in nice and slick on the landing.
It'll eat up a lot of space if you
You're
let
going to have
it.
to predict that, and a lot of flyers, we've seen this time and time again, especially with powered aircraft. They come in and they fly it to the ground. You're not going to be able to fly the Magellan to the ground without finding that you just overshot your landing space.
Exactly.
Tremendously. So you've got to land it.
Yep.
You've got to anticipate it, come in, get into a nice glide slope, throw it on those flaps, bleed off the
Yeah.
speed, and then you can hold. We held the. Again, it goes into ground handling.
Yeah.
You hold it at 6
However
inches or 8
long-
inches off the
however
deck,
long
and it
you
just
want.
goes and goes and goes and goes. So,
Yeah.
but it does tolerate being pushed down to the ground pretty well.
Well, I
It's not
pushed
bad.
it when there were a few times I took it straight down to get it to where I wanted it, and then let the speed bleed off. But it doesn't come down on its own very easily.
I would expect if someone's doing a park flying, the first time they fly it, give yourself double the landing space.
Oh, definitely.
Run out that you would expect, because it's going to take you a while to get used to how slick the airframe is, how much lift it has when it gets down to the ground effect, and how long it wants to carry. And you don't want to force it in the ground. That's when you're going to get in trouble. You're going to spin it around. You're going to loop it. You're going to
Plus,
wingtip it.
if you're one of those guys that enjoys the flight and don't really care about the landing and the takeoff, then
Yeah.
then you're not going to worry about it. But you and I, like we've said from the beginning, and we say it all the time, one of our biggest joys of flying is bringing that thing in.
It's the end of the flight.
It's
the
greasing it
perfect
in.
end to a great flight.
Yep.
Is greasing that landing.
Yep.
And yeah, for us, it takes something away if you can't bring it in.
Oh, definitely.
In a
If
controlled
you got to
situation.
force it to the ground, then we just lost part of the flight for
Yep.
us.
Yep.
Portability, 4 out of 5. This wing, if you do take it off, you've got 4 leads coming in. It would be time consuming, but not enough to keep you from wanting to transport
No, I've
it that
removed
way.
the wings once during transport, and then generally I just throw it in the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
It's, I can turn it sideways because it's so short,
Yeah.
nose to tail, that I can just spin it sideways and set it right in the truck.
But if you have to take it apart, it's not.
It's not bad.
it's
You
not
got two wing bolts; they pop right off. And the nice thing too is you got a really short. You got that short spar because
Yeah.
of the D-box wing. So within a few inches, you've pulled the wings apart.
Yep.
Rotate them sideways, set them down, and off you go. And they do have protectors on the bottom side of the wing for the servos. You don't have
Yep.
to worry about gouging out your linkage or anything. Not only does it improve some of the aerodynamics, it also gives you nice protection
Yeah.
on your servo pockets.
Skill level, intermediate. I would say we talked about this a little bit too, Kurt. Intermediate. It's definitely not somebody. It's not a trainer by any
It's
means.
not a trainer sailplane. If you want to do training sailplane flying,
Yep.
power glider flying, you're going to do or powered sailplane. You're going to do a 3-channel.
Yeah.
With a decent.
Well, there's a couple
dihedral.
of things that are going to require you to have your chops up. One, we definitely talked about. If you lose orientation easy, this
has a
thing
very
has a very
small
thin
profile.
profile.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
very
it's
thin.
and even though we didn't lose it by any means when we were flying, there were a couple times that we commented Man, this thing would be easy to get yourself turned around.
It's difficult for us too, though, because we're not beginner pilots. And think of how often you lost orientation on park flight, like regular powered high wing planes and stuff, as a beginner, just because you don't have the calm and the sensibility about you to say, well, I'm going to go ahead and bank right or bank left.
And you know that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you just do it. It's like, oh, bank load up. I guess that's the other way.
And on this particular plane, you're not going to be doing aerobatics so wild that you do lose that.
No,
and
the other thing too is the roll rate.
Yes.
Beginners get themselves out of trouble with a little higher roll rate. This is a 2-meter wingspan.
Yeah.
And its roll rate is not extremely aggressive. That's good, though. I think you were surprised when you pulled it through.
Oh, it was very axial. I was really
rolls,
surprised how axial it was for being as a big a wingspan as it was.
But imagine being up on a heavy bank and being 15 feet off the ground. As a beginner, you can get yourself in trouble real quick.
And I think the landings would be the next thing. It would push you to intermediate, because you are, like we talked before, you don't want to fly this thing straight to the ground, but you've got to force the landing a lot of times.
Yeah.
And force it to a point where you get it where you're comfortable, and then start letting it glide in.
Yeah, and you can bring it in fairly hot, keep the wings nice and level, and it's going to slide along the grass nicely. But and flaps, of course, that's the other thing too. It's one more control surface to take into consideration. Now, where typically we have a lot of ballooning going on with the power plane, like a low wing or anything else.
Sure.
You don't have that tendency with this, which we were surprised and pleased with.
But it's another element that's going to take your attention away for just a second.
Absolutely.
If you're not used to it.
And if you get in trouble, you're putting the power on, you leave the flaps down, and all of a sudden you may be starving that power plant, and you're putting yourself in a stall condition. So it's a little more of a challenge. But
overall, very nice experience, I think.
Fantastic flying plane. You can see the full review at our website at tobefly.com. For mobile users, you can go to rcflightsource.com, download our mobile app, and take our content with you on the go. I'm Kurt with Two Brothers Hobby.
And I'm Rob. Thanks for watching.